Welcome to the art scene. I'm your host, Lila Snow. I'm going to start with Group 93 having the show at American University in the Rotunda. It's available whenever the building is open, unlike the museum, which has hours. There are 17 artists, quite a variety, former faculty, people with MFAs and bachelor's degrees, and artists who just took some courses. There's Myrtle Katzen with French Impressionist paintings, Lucy Blankstein, Claudia Vess with unusual work, and Joan Bierbaum with large abstract paintings. There are also new shows at the museum, and Alice and Percy Martin, who ran a print workshop for a long time. I saw his prints when we were both at Gallery 10 in the 80s. And a lot of people use that workshop. There's also Grace Hardigan, so there are interesting new shows. But I wanted to vote this program. I've been asked by the wonderful staff about reminiscences. And there are many things happening now that remind me of the 40s and 50s and 60s. So I start with my first trip to Europe in 1950. It was a $100 plane ticket on a propeller plane that took 24 hours going from New York to Newfoundland, the Azores, and then finishing up in Luxembourg. My grandmother always believed you should have a roast chicken on hand in case you ever needed it. So when she heard of our trip, she cooked a roast chicken, and I admonished her, "You don't know about travel, they feed you on the plane." And we took the roast chicken on the plane, and they gave us an American cheese sandwich every 3 hours, and we had a bidding war for pieces of hot chicken, but we didn't give up most of it. So then we were late arriving in Luxembourg. The airport didn't have electricity, so they had runners with torches run alongside the landing strip to help the plane land. That was, 1950 was a holy year. So if you went to the Vatican and got your passport stamped, you could ride the rails in Italy for a big discount. So that's what we did. And I just fell in love with French bread, ham sandwiches, floor-to-ceiling windows, and there were carafes of wine for $1 cheaper than bottled water. We weren't used to the wine, so we'd collapse under a tree, and a British woman admonished us that it didn't look good, and she showed us a more secluded place to sleep. There was still rubble. We were the first wave of tourists after World War II, and it was a heady time. So we spent a lot of time in Italy, and then in 1965-66, we lived in Rome. My husband had a Guggenheim and a Fulbright. Well, tickets to the opera in Italy were passed down from generation to generation, so there were very few tickets just available for sale. But some of the Italian families gave up their tickets to the Fulbrights. If you went to the Fulbright office to try to buy some tickets, the woman on the phone was always, yes, si, principessa, no, contessa. Everyone was had a title. And we were looking for an apartment, and I have a photograph of us while we were looking for an apartment in Rome. But while we were in the hotel, we lived near Santa Maria della Minerva. It's a church famous because there's a gold sculpture of Christ by Michelangelo. But it's also famous, especially among physicists, because that's where Galileo was taken to be questioned. Most documents were for scholars written in Latin, but there was a street play with two Italians talking street Italian about Galileo's discovery that the Earth was not the center of the universe. And somehow it was thought that this would really disturb what the ordinary Italian felt about Christianity. And so one of the things you study when you take a course in physics is mechanics, where there are equations for how efficient a lever is. And so they said, Galileo is a good physicist. You don't have to torture him. Just show him the instruments, because he could see how the damage to bones if you press certain levers with certain lengths. And so the story is they didn't torture him, and he said that the Earth was the center of the universe. And when he comes out in the street, he looks at the sky and says, "Eppure siamo over." No matter what I said in there, the universe is still doing what it's supposed to do. There was a book about Galileo's daughter because he was under house arrest for the rest of his life. And his daughter was taken out of a nunnery to take care of him for the rest of his life. Well, about 25 years ago, there was a ceremony to honor Alfred Nobel, who spent the last 6 years of his life in San Remo, Italy. It was a big deal. The Pope came from Rome to be photographed with the physicists. And at that time, they said that the 5-year Vatican study was complete. And the conclusion was there was guilt on both sides. And I thought of that when I saw, actually for the second time, Spike Lee's Black Klansman, which ends with Charlottesville and President Trump saying there was guilt on both sides. So on to other things that I was reminded of. The migrants have been in the news. And when I was an undergraduate at Brooklyn College, I belonged to a group called People's Songs. Actually, if you Google Margot Mayo, there's a tiny clip of me dancing. Well, the State Department decided to do a documentary about American culture. It was one of the first. And so they had the People's Songs dance group go to, there's a famous photographer for Life magazine, John Milley. This was photographed in his studio. And we had Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. We had a guest of Leadbelly, who has become sort of a cult figure. And there was Union songs like I Dreamed I Saw Joe Hill last night. And we danced, and Pete Seeger sang. And one of the songs, Woody Guthrie wrote a song about the migrants who went down. They used old propeller planes at a time in '48 when not many people were traveling with planes. But this old plane went down over Los Gatos. And Woody Guthrie wrote a song about you didn't have a name when you rode the old airplane. All they called you was deportees, because they didn't list the names. Actually, they recently uncovered the names. So that was a heady time. And then I remember when Oliver Guthrie, I think that was around when Oliver Guthrie was born. So another memory because there are so many acting directors in the current administration. I remember when Zero Mostel did a piece about acting, and actually he was blacklisted, and there was a group, Rena Lardner's daughter and Zero Mostel's son, and the son of the man who wrote the screenplay for Laura, called Red Diaper Babies, about what happened to them when there was no income because they were blacklisted. So Zero Mostel comes out on stage with a black cloak and throws the cloak over his shoulder and does Hamlet's soliloquy, to be or not to be. And a man off stage, when he's finished, comes on and says, "That was fantastic, what acting?" And Zero Mostel says, "That's how I always talk. This is acting." So that's another memory from that time. And emoluments have been in the news. And I remember when Haile Selassie gave Jackie Kennedy a beautiful leopard coat, and she just looked wonderful in it. And the limit of what you could accept from a foreign government was $50. And Henry Kissinger said, "Yes, she looks beautiful, and it's only worth $49.95. So also, I heard about kids in a cafeteria who are given a hot meal, and when they get to the cashier, it's revealed that their parents are in arrears paying. So it's thrown in the trash because once one kid has touched it, it can't be used. And they're given a cold sandwich, so everyone knows that her parents are too poor to pay for the lunch. And when I lived in the poor Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn, there were kids who got free shoes, and no one wore tennis shoes, or Nikes were out of the question, but kids wore brown shoes. And so they gave these poor kids black shoes, and they came in white boxes. I was 8 years old, and I remember they were squirreled away and never worn because it was part of a shaming thing that was happening to them. So I've been reading audio books. Oh, and I did promise an elephant sandwich joke. So this is also part of the times, because when Russia first had tourism in the 60s, a man goes into a restaurant and the waiter says, "You may have heard we have shortages, but we don't have shortages. Order anything." And the man says, "Okay, I'll have an elephant and onion sandwich." So the waiter goes to the kitchen and comes back and says, "How about an onion sandwich?" And the man says, "You said there were no shortages. What's going on?" And the waiter says, "There are no shortages. The chef just said that he doesn't want to cut up a whole elephant just for one sandwich." So I also thought of signs of the times, because in New York, everyone wears black, and there's a woman who goes to a bagel shop for bagel and coffee every morning on the way to work, and she always wears black. And she runs out of black clothes, and she's wearing red, and she walks in, and the bagel guy says, "What's the matter? Someone died?" So I'll finish with an Einstein joke, because two women are standing on a shore, and one says, "My daughter is a physicist." "What's that?" "That's like Einstein." "What's that?" "Well, if you stand on the shore, it looks like a boat is going, it's relativity. It looks like a boat is going by. If you're on the boat, it looks like the shore is going by." And the other woman says, from that she makes a living. So next time, audio books, and I'll see you next time. This is Lila Snow.